The stars used to mean something. Once they were symbols of hope, of humanity's climb towards the impossible. But now, when I looked up at them, I saw betrayal. We were banished, thrown out like diseased animals from the galactic stage. The High Species Council had gathered, their smug, scaled, feathered, and chitin-plated faces united in one thing: ridding the galaxy of humans. The official reason? Unstable, primitive, dangerous. The real reason? We wouldn't kneel. My name is Dren. I was 17 when the last shuttle left the Andari system, carrying the remaining embers of Earth's population. That day's burned into my mind. The Council ships didn't even wait until we left orbit before they began glassing our cities, turning Earth into a cauterized graveyard. No war, no mercy. Just judgment. We were forced to settle on Vectra 9, a frozen rock so far out it barely saw its sun. It wasn't a planet, it was exile. The Council said it was generous. They gave us a chance to survive, but nothing else. No technology, no transport, no future. The first 5 years? Hell, we lost half our people to the cold, to starvation, to madness. Children died with frozen tears on their faces. Mothers buried sons in ice that never thawed. And still no help came, not even a whisper. That silence changed us. We didn't cry out, we didn't beg. We buried our dead, lit fires in the dark, and swore we'd outlive the bastards who exiled us. Humanity didn't die. We hardened, we adapted, and we remembered. I was 30 when the first fusion core came online. Built from salvaged parts, buried deep beneath the surface, it gave us warmth and power. We had engineers, thinkers, men who remembered how to build from nothing. They worked in silence, their hands trembling from hunger, but refusing to stop. And slowly, painfully, Vectra 9 became a forge. No one knew what we were doing. The Council had cut us off from the networks, assuming we were too broken to ever rise again. That arrogance would be their undoing. I led the first deep mining team into the black veins, caves of obsidian laced with rare metals. We lost 12 men to a collapse, but we found what we needed: the elements of war. Weapons came next. Not sleek, polished things like the Council built. Ours were brutal, jagged, and merciless. We didn't design ships for beauty, we built them for vengeance. And always, in every meeting, we reminded ourselves, never forget Earth, never forget the silence. We spent 2 decades in that frozen silence, training, building, preparing. Then the signal came. It was weak, buried in static, but we decoded it. A distress beacon from a Terran outpost that was supposed to be destroyed. The Council had lied. They hadn't killed us all. They'd enslaved the few they found useful. Human bodies bent in factories. Human minds wired into ships as organic processors. Our people turned into tools. I remember staring at the screen, my fists clenched. I didn't speak for minutes. When I finally did, my voice shook with rage. No more silence. That night, we named our first warship, the Forgiven Lie. A jagged black spearhead designed to slip past Council scanners and gut their arrogance from the inside. I was its captain. The launch was underground, hidden beneath miles of ice. No fanfare, no cheers, just determination. We weren't coming back as victims. We were coming back as a storm. Our first target was a supply outpost in the Arkin Belt, staffed by a council race called the Morvae, cowards in glass armor who once called humans monkeys with matches. We burned their station in 7 minutes. No survivors. The council still didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't believe it. Maybe they thought it was pirates or malfunction. They couldn't imagine we had returned. That was their mistake. By the time we hit the 4th outpost, we sent a message. 5 words burned into every network we could breach. We were silent. Now listen. The galaxy heard us, and they trembled. They called us ghosts. At first it was whispered across back channels, low-frequency comms, pirate networks, ships going dark, outposts gutted, not looted, erased, no trace of attackers, no warning, just cold destruction. It wasn't fear at first, it was disbelief. The Council had written us off so long ago that the idea of humans striking back was unthinkable. They told themselves it was mercenaries, rogue machines, insurgents, anything but the truth. But when we left our mark on the 7th target, everything changed. We hit a Council defense node, a fortified relay station orbiting the Darin star. It was protected by 3 patrol fleets and planetary artillery. We took it in 11 minutes. No prisoners, no wreckage. Just silence, then a broadcast. "You should have killed us all." That was the first time my name was mentioned in the open. Dren of Vectra 9, Terra-class strategist, wanted alive for high treason against the Galactic Accord. They still didn't get it. Treason? Against what? A system that murdered our home, enslaved our kind, and left our dead to rot in the cold? They hadn't exiled criminals. They'd exiled survivors. And now, they were facing something worse than rebels. They were facing the product of their own betrayal. My crew, hell, my family now, had been forged in the worst environment imaginable. We didn't have cushioned command chairs or sleek ships with orchestral launch tones. Our hulls groaned with barely contained power. Our AIs were spliced together from salvaged Earth code and repurposed alien cores, unstable, unpredictable, and vicious. We didn't call them ships, we called them revenants. And each one carried the names of the dead. Mine was etched with Carrie, age 12, died first winter. She was my sister. Every time I gave the order to fire, I said her name under my breath. Our second wave wasn't surgical. It was a blitz. Fuel stations, AI archives, research colonies. Anywhere that fed the Council's power, we turned it to dust. But we didn't strike randomly. Each target had one thing in common. They profited from Earth's death. Corporations that supplied weapons. Biolabs that dissected human corpses. Trade guilds that made fortunes auctioning off survivors. Some of the footage we recovered? Children kept in stasis as test subjects. Men wired into pain-mapping chairs. I watched it alone in the comm room, fists bloodied from punching the wall. No mercy. After the 10th operation, the Council officially declared war on human remnants. Cute title. They sent fleets, drones, kill teams. We destroyed them all. We weren't just using brute force. We were learning. Every battle taught us something new. How to override their network protocols. How to mimic their encryption keys. How to turn their own tech against them. They built the system. We corrupted it. And still, we hadn't struck their core. Not yet. We wanted them to feel fear. To know we were coming. To remember every smug speech, every primitive insult, every time they looked down on us like animals. Then we'd hit them where it hurt most, the high seat itself. But before that, we had to find the last piece. Earth. We needed to see what was left of it, not from orbit but on the ground. To stand on the soil where it all began. To bury our ghosts and dig up the fire for the final war. I brought a small team, only those who had lost everything. No tourists, no talkers, just men with grief deep enough to carry into battle. When we landed, the silence hit us harder than the radiation. There was no color left, no trees, just glass plains and bone dust. I dropped to one knee where my childhood home once stood. No tears, just rage. A fire so hot I couldn't speak. Then I saw it. Half buried beneath fused stone, a charred, rusted earth flag. Still clinging to the pole like it refused to fall. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The next day we carved a message into the crust with plasma drills, big enough to be seen from orbit. We remember. Then we left. Not as exiles, not as victims, but as executioners. The silence after Earth was heavier than before. No one spoke on the return flight. We sat strapped into the hold of the forgiven lie, faces like stone. Some clutched broken trinkets they'd found in the ruins, an old photo plate, a melted toy, a twisted wedding band. Others just stared, not at the walls, through them, into the past. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's hands shaking as she packed our evacuation bag. I remembered the way she kissed my forehead before boarding that last shuttle, whispering, "Don't forget who you are." I hadn't. Now we were ready to burn that memory into the universe. Our plan for the high seat was suicide. We all knew it. The Council's homeworld, Sarath Prime, was a floating fortress, defenses layered across orbit, moons weaponized, artificial black holes swirling like loyal pets around it. No one had ever breached it. No one had ever tried. Until now. But this wasn't just about strategy. It was about making them bleed. We had intel, old intel, gathered over years from bribes and infiltrations, smuggled by humans who'd hidden among the Council's rats, acting obedient, silent, just like we had on Vectra 9. The Council met twice a solar year in open assembly. During those days, security thinned just enough for us to carve a path. That next meeting was in 6 days. It wasn't much time. We gathered the captains, 9 ships, each one crewed by men who'd lost everything to the Council's betrayal. None of us expected to return. That wasn't the point. Victory or not, the galaxy needed to see that humanity had never forgiven. I addressed them in the hangar bay beneath the cold glow of shielded lamps. No flags, no diplomacy, no second chances. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to remind them that what they threw away didn't die. It learned to kill. I paused, looking each man in the eye. Scarred faces, hardened hearts. We will be remembered, not for our mercy, but for the silence we shattered. They raised their fists without a word. It was time. The approach to Sarath Prime was slow, calculated. We cloaked the ships beneath recycled mining hulls and falsified Council transponder signals. One misstep, and their orbital AI sentinels would tear us apart in microseconds. But we didn't slip. Not because of tech, because we knew their arrogance. They still couldn't accept that we were capable of something like this. That was their weakness. They didn't watch the cracks in their own foundation. We arrived in the orbit blind spot at 0200. The Forgiven Lie split formation and began its descent, followed by the Carrion Thorn and the Winter Moor. 6 more waited behind the dark side of the moon, ready for signal. I felt sweat on my hands. Not fear. Focus. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the rusted Earth flag pin I'd taken from the ruins. Not for luck, for reminder. The comms lit up. High Council Assembly begins in 20 minutes. My comms officer muttered. Perfect. I activated the drone swarm. Thousands of microbots, invisible to their sensors, slithered down toward the capital's central tower like falling ash. They carried more than surveillance. They carried virus code, a system crash, timed to hit exactly as we breached the inner airspace. We got one shot. One. And then it happened. The signal flared red. Council net down! Orbit comm disrupted! I slammed my fist into the command table. Launch everything! The revenants screamed through the clouds, no longer pretending. Weapons live. Shields hot. Engines pushed to limits. We weren't aiming at ships. We were aiming at their arrogance. Explosions laced the sky. Their response was sluggish, confused. Council fighters scrambled like insects caught in a flood. They weren't ready. We punched through the inner barrier. The capital spires loomed ahead, gleaming, proud, symbols of everything they thought invincible. I activated the channel and sent one last broadcast across every open frequency in the known galaxy. This is Dren, human, exile, survivor, we have not forgotten. And now, neither will you. Then we fired. The first missile struck the Council's Tower of Order and split it down the middle like a rotten tree. They had no idea what hit them. For centuries, they believed themselves untouchable, above fear, beyond consequence. But in those first 10 seconds of the assault, all their peace treaties and diplomatic codes meant nothing. They saw what silence had created. My hands didn't shake as I fired. Not anymore. Every shot I took, I imagined the faces of the men who sat in that chamber when they sentenced Earth to death like it was paperwork. They called it necessary containment. They called us culturally unstable. They didn't care what those words meant to us. So now I gave them something they would understand. Fire. The forgiven lie dove toward the Council Dome like a spear from the gods. Enemy fire lanced across the sky. Turrets, drones, even antimatter bursts. But we cut through them like smoke. Our hull screamed under pressure, and sparks danced around us. But we didn't stop. This wasn't a tactical strike. This was a message. Inside the council chamber, chaos reigned. We landed on the main platform, weapons hot, and stormed the gates. I led the breach team myself, 5 of us, armed in black-on-black combat suits rigged from scavenged tech, brutal and efficient. The guards didn't stand a chance. I shot the first 2 in the chest before they even raised their rifles. Another tried to run. We put a round in his back without slowing down. We weren't here to make statements. We were here to finish something. The chamber doors loomed ahead, 10 meters tall, lined with gold from the mines of Noriax, mined by human slaves. I set the charges. Stand clear. The explosion blew the doors off their hinges, and the high-pitched wails of council delegates filled the air. That sound, pure, raw fear, was the most honest thing they'd ever offered. They were all there, every last one of them. The 12 ruling species, draped in silk and bio-armor, staring at us like they'd seen ghosts. They had. I stepped forward. My rifle was lowered, but my voice hit them harder than any round could. You remember us now? No one spoke. Not the serpentine Talari who'd once called humans filth. Not the winged Seric who argued we were genetically predisposed to chaos. Not even the chair-born Zila who smiled as Earth burned. I pointed my weapon at the central dais. You destroyed Earth and thought we'd disappear. You enslaved the survivors and thought we'd be grateful for scraps. But we didn't vanish. We watched. We built. We waited. Still nothing. Until one of them, a bony, pale creature called Prax, mustered a whisper. You'll bring war to the galaxy. I laughed. You brought war the moment you called genocide order. We're just answering. Behind me, one of my men tossed a black data core onto the council floor. Footage flickered to life. Images of human corpses dissected in council labs, children wired into AI experiments, entire families auctioned off for genetic testing. Their faces changed then, from fear to guilt. Too late. I raised my weapon. You don't get forgiveness, you get judgment. I gave each of them a choice. Stand trial under a human court, or fall where they sat. One tried to run. He died with half his skull missing. 3 surrendered. 2 shot themselves. The rest tried to argue, plead, bargain. But there was no more diplomacy left in us. Not after Earth. Not after the silence. In 30 minutes, we took the most powerful governing body in the galaxy and shattered it. Not because we were stronger, but because we were done being quiet. Outside, the sky over Serath Prime burned. Our other revenants had decimated the fleets. The orbital AI sentinels were corrupted with our virus. Chaos bloomed across every sector of the Council's networks. But we weren't done. I stepped out onto the central balcony, camera drones hovering nearby. Billions across the galaxy would be watching. I spoke clearly, with no script, no edits. Humanity was banished and forgotten, but we survived, in silence, in darkness, in pain. Now we return not as victims, but as the reckoning. I looked into the lens. To every world that turned its back on us, we are not coming to ask. I paused. We're coming to collect. The galaxy reacted like a wounded animal. Serath Prime was the heart of their illusion, clean, stable, godlike in its order, and we'd just torn that heart out in front of billions. They didn't know what to do. Some species froze in panic. Their governors declared martial law, shut down transport lanes, broadcast propaganda. Stay calm, the situation is being contained. But it wasn't. Other species, those who had never had a seat at the table, started listening. They saw us not as monsters, but as proof that the Council wasn't invincible, that the galaxy's order could bleed. And some of them? They cheered. The forgiven lie drifted through the void, scarred and smoking from the fight. Inside, we were silent again. Not because we were broken, but because we knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something bigger, something we'd waited decades to ignite. But with war comes cost. We lost Captain Merrick during the siege, gutted by a plasma spike while dragging 2 injured men to safety. I held his hand until it stopped shaking. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. His last words were, "Tell them I didn't kneel." I did. To every ship, every squad. I told them all. We burned his name into the bulkhead of the next vessel we launched, the Iron Ash. She flew out 3 days later, loaded to the teeth with vengeance and survivors who no longer feared death. But while we celebrated our strike, the true enemy stirred. The Remnant Protocol. It was a whisper we'd heard before, buried deep in intercepted council files, half-coded in dead languages. A failsafe. Something built in secret in the uncharted regions of the Shattered Ring Nebula. Not a weapon, not a fleet. A purge. It was never meant for us alone. It was meant for anyone who ever threatened council dominance. And now, after our attack, they activated it. We got the feed from a fringe colony called Jash 9, a peaceful mining moon, mostly neutral. One day after our broadcast, it vanished. No survivors, no radiation, no debris, just gone. At first, we thought it was a black hole event. Then came the second one, then the third. Same pattern. Planets erased, civilians turned to vapor, entire solar systems silenced like they'd never existed. This wasn't revenge. It was fear. The Council had lost control, and now they were hitting the panic switch. But they weren't doing it alone. There was someone else in the shadows. Something older. We caught glimpses in fragmented data, unknown vessels, massive and bone-white, without registration or drive signatures. They didn't broadcast. They didn't leave survivors. Even our best AIs couldn't track them. They weren't Council. They weren't us. One of our codebreakers called them cleaners, not soldiers. Executioners. Whoever or whatever they weren't just here to end us. They were here to erase the story. If we didn't act fast, everything we had fought for, every death, every fire, every piece of justice would vanish with us. So we did what we always did. We adapted. We went underground, literally. Our engineers buried bases into asteroid cores, built mobile data sanctuaries, and carved bunkers into the crust of abandoned planets. We stopped trying to broadcast our message. Now we focused on preserving it. We encoded our history in bloodsteel. We tattooed our children's backs with coordinates. We trained the next generation not to speak our truth, but to be it. And we hunted. The cleaners weren't perfect. They had patterns, delays, gaps. We started baiting them, sacrificing drones to track movement, luring them into dead systems, mapping their behavior. It was slow, painful. But piece by piece we learned, and then we captured one. It cost us 2 ships and 83 lives, but we dragged its corpse into a deep crust vault on Vectra 9. It wasn't a machine. It looked like a body, but wrong. White, smooth, eyeless. No organs, no skin, just a shell. But when our surgeons cracked it open, they found something inside. Something human. Not fully. Twisted. Engineered. But the DNA patterns were unmistakable, a match to Earth strains from over 200 years ago. That's when we realized the Council hadn't just banished us, they had cloned us, modified us, turned parts of our own people into tools of extermination. I stared at that thing in the chamber for hours. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. They had used us to erase ourselves. The silence I felt then was different. It wasn't cold. It was focused. This war wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reclaiming what was left of our species before nothing remained but council lies and butchered clones. We dissected the thing for 6 straight days. Not out of curiosity, out of necessity. Every hour that passed meant another system risked being erased, another truth smothered by these twisted abominations. The cleaner, what we now called white skin, had no pulse, no organs we recognized, but the tissue responded to stimuli. It reacted to human voices, especially pain. One of our medtechs sliced it open and said it twitched when she spoke about Earth. Not flinched, twitched, like a dog remembering a beating. It wasn't just designed to destroy us, it was made from us. One of our oldest geneticists, a gruff old bastard named Varin, finally cracked the horror wide open. He stood in the biolab, gloves stained, his voice a mix of triumph and disgust. "They didn't clone us to copy us," he said. "They cloned us to correct us." I didn't get it at first. Then he showed me the sequence, a gene code engineered to eliminate what the Council had labeled aggression, rebellion, tribal autonomy. Everything that made humans dangerous in their eyes, ripped out and replaced with obedience, silence, passivity. They weren't trying to kill humanity. They were trying to replace it. The cleaners were their final product, a perfected version of us. Genetically silenced, morally hollow, driven only to cleanse the original sin they claimed we represented. I stood over the corpse of that thing, our stolen blood wrapped in artificial bone, and I made a decision. This wasn't war anymore. It was genocide by erasure, and we weren't fighting for revenge. We were fighting for the right to exist. I summoned the captains. Every Revenant-class ship that hadn't been lost or crippled. We didn't have many. 10 at most, and half of those needed serious repairs. Didn't matter. This was all we had. All we needed. I laid it out clearly. We were heading for the Nebula Graveyard. That's where the cleaners came from. Deep in the shattered remains of systems the Council had purged centuries ago. A place so warped with residual quantum damage that most species considered it cursed. The perfect place to hide the truth. Or grow a weapon. We knew the risks. No one expected to come back. But something shifted this time. When I looked in the eyes of my crew, I didn't see despair. I saw purpose. Men who'd lost homes, children, futures. None of them were scared. They were done with fear. Done running. Done reacting. This time, we were hunting. The journey through the graveyard nearly killed us before we arrived. Space doesn't behave like space in there. Time loops, light bends. One of our ships aged 20 years in a minute and imploded before the captain could scream. Another fell into a gravity well and turned inside out, literally. Still, we pushed through, and at the heart of it, we found it. A black station the size of a moon. No markings, no emissions, just hanging there like a cancer that refused to die. It was alive in a way. The second we approached, our systems glitched. AIs screamed, comms scrambled. People started hearing voices, their mothers, their dead kids, their own names whispered backwards. I ordered a hard dock, suits on, guns hot, inside. It was worse. The walls were made of a fleshy alloy that pulsed beneath our boots. Doors opened like eyelids, closed like lips. We found labs, not clean white ones, but caves of horror. Glass tanks full of floating bodies, some human, some almost human. Rows of children with no eyes, organs growing from walls. Brains kept alive by electric screams. We found files, ancient files, the original project name. Human Redesign Initiative, Phase 0 Silence Protocol. This wasn't a reaction to our rebellion. This had started before Earth was destroyed. The Council had planned to replace us from the beginning. All their diplomacy, their trials, their containment solutions. A lie. They never wanted peace. They wanted obedience. And when we wouldn't give it, they decided to grow something that would. I was shaking by the time we reached the final chamber. In the center was her. She looked human, perfectly human. No scars, no hate, no emotion. But when she opened her eyes, I felt like I was drowning in ice. She spoke in perfect Terran standard. Software kind. You were the prototype. I am the solution. We tried to kill her. We failed. She didn't flinch when we opened fire. 3 of us emptied high-density plasma rounds straight into her chest. The kind that could melt through Council war armor. The kind that tore through battleships. But she didn't bleed. The rounds hit her like smoke hitting stone. Soft ripples across her skin, like she absorbed the very energy meant to kill her. Her body didn't move. Her eyes didn't blink. She just looked at us. And then she spoke again, in that calm, clinical voice that didn't belong in a chamber full of nightmares. You've confirmed your instability. Resistance is expected. Compliance will be induced. Then came the scream. Not from her. From us. All of us dropped to our knees. It felt like our skulls were imploding from the inside. Our implants malfunctioned. Our visors glitched. Even the oxygen regulators began reversing. Men clawed at their suits, blood spilling from their noses, ears, eyes. She didn't lift a finger. She just stood there, watching. It wasn't telepathy. It wasn't a weapon. It was something worse. A command. Somehow, somewhere along the chain of Council evolution, they had designed her to override our nervous systems, our very biology. A backdoor into the human body. One we didn't even know existed. She took 3 steps toward me. I could barely breathe. I remember the taste of copper, the sound of my own heartbeat pounding like a war drum in my head. And then she stopped. Not out of mercy. Something had changed. The room trembled. A low humming noise began to rise, and suddenly she turned. For the first time, there was confusion on her face. Then fear. And that's when I knew we weren't alone anymore. Varen's voice came through the comm, ragged and panicked. Dren, get out! You triggered something. You weren't supposed to find her! What the hell are you talking about? I rasped, still coughing blood. She's not just a clone. She's a keystone, a failsafe. That station isn't a lab. It's a gate. The humming grew louder. Panels along the walls began peeling open like rotten fruit, revealing swirling cores of blue-black energy. It wasn't Council tech. It was older, organic. It felt like the station itself was waking up. And her? She didn't look so calm anymore. She backed away slowly, muttering something in a language I didn't recognize. Not Council tongue. Not Terran. It was pre-collapse, pre-human. She wasn't the solution. She was the lock, and we had just broken it. My men staggered to their feet. We didn't know what the hell we were facing, but we knew one thing. We had to get out. Whatever we'd unleashed was bigger than the Council, bigger than the war, bigger than anything we'd prepared for. As we ran, she screamed, not in pain, but in desperation, like she was trying to hold something back. The hallway behind us began warping, stretching, folding into itself like paper melting in fire. One of my men, Corin, got caught in it. He didn't even scream. He just stopped existing. By the time we reached the docks, the entire station was collapsing inward, like it was trying to erase itself before what was inside could get out. We barely made it back to the Forgiven Lie. I gave the order, burn the sky. We launched every missile we had at the station's core, tactical nukes, sun melters, gravity crunchers. The station screamed. I swear to this day I heard it scream, and then in one last flash of blinding violet light, it disappeared. Not exploded, vanished. The nebula quieted. No tremors, no shockwaves, just the cold silence of deep space. We didn't speak on the ride back. What the hell was there to say? The Council had created something they couldn't control. We weren't the monsters. They were. They didn't just try to destroy us. They tried to replace us with something worse. And now, whatever they'd locked away down there, it was awake. Back at Vectra 9, we found chaos. More colonies wiped out. Whole species going dark. And the Council? Gone. No communications, no fleets, no orders. Their homeworlds were intact, but dead silent. No survivors, no signs of battle, just lights on, and no one home. Something was moving across the stars now, something none of us could trace. She wasn't the enemy. She was just the beginning. And now we had a new mission. Find out what the Council tried to bury, before it buries everything else. They say silence is peaceful. That's a lie. Silence is terrifying when it stretches across planets that once bustled with life. When entire civilizations vanish overnight, and the only sound left is your own breath echoing back off dead walls. We moved fast. Vectra 9 was no longer safe. None of the human strongholds were. Whatever we had woken in that station, it wasn't bound by laws of physics or logic. It didn't follow patterns. It didn't declare war. It just consumed. We called it the hollowing. Because everywhere it touched, things didn't die. They emptied. Ships, stations, cities, perfectly preserved, completely void of people, as if someone or something had plucked the soul out of reality and left the skin behind. But we weren't just watching. We were hunting. Our scouts tracked anomalies across 13 sectors. Every point lined up with ancient council networks, older than their official founding. We dug deeper, through stolen archives, corrupted AIs, even psychic echoes pulled from dying council minds. And there it was. Project Requiem. Not a weapon, not even a purge system. A summoning. The Council, arrogant and desperate, had once attempted to harness something beyond space, something that existed between dimensions. They didn't invent it. They found it, buried in a shattered dimension adjacent to our own. An intelligence, a force, a god, maybe, or a mistake. They called it Eidolon, the silence that thinks. It didn't kill. It rewrote. That's why the cleaners existed. Not to destroy us, but to reshape us into something the Eidolon could tolerate. Docile, neutral, void of resistance. We were noise. And the Council tried to make us quiet. They failed. And now Eidolon was loose. We had one shot left. Inside the ruins of old Earth, beneath the crust where the original cryocore once powered our cities, we found something even the Council missed. A relic from humanity's earliest days in space. Something older than the Accord, older than even our first colonies. A weapon, not made of steel, made of memory. Humanity had encoded its legacy into something physical, a resonance core that could transmit neural frequencies, emotional states, ancestral trauma across space. A psychic scream. We called it the Soul Fire Beacon. And if we lit it, every trace of what made humanity human, our grief, our rage, our history, would echo into the void. It wouldn't kill Eidolon, but it would force it to hear us. Not the clones, not the silence. United States. But there was a price. The beacon needed a living host, someone connected enough to the past and strong enough to withstand the burn. Someone who could carry all that weight and become the voice of an entire species. There was no debate. It had to be me. I left my command in the hands of my second. The crew didn't cry. We didn't have that luxury anymore. I descended alone, deep beneath the crust of our ruined home. I walked past the bones of old cities, across fields of ash and frozen lakes filled with shattered monuments. At the center I found it, pulsing, ancient and warm, the Soulfire beacon. I placed my hand on it. And then I screamed, not in pain, in memory. I saw my mother's last smile, my sister frozen under a collapsed roof, my father's fists shaking as he begged the evacuation officer to let us stay. I saw the streets of Earth, music, laughter, riots, rebellion, fire. I saw the stars turning away. I saw betrayal. I saw hope. And I saw the fire that would never go out. The beacon lit, and the galaxy heard. The scream ripped through subspace, tearing open the veil the Council tried to sew shut. And Eidolon stopped. It didn't vanish, it didn't collapse, but it listened. It saw us, not as a virus, not as an error, but as a species that refused to forget. Not gods, not victims, just men who remembered. And then it retreated. No ships, no war, just a whisper in the back of every living mind. You are heard. I collapsed, burning from the inside. My memories scattered like ash in wind. But before darkness took me, I knew. We'd done it. We hadn't just survived. We'd been remembered. And for humanity, that was enough.